Hi, this is Daryl Meyer from Keller, Texas. Today is Friday, November 19th, 2010. Hope you guys are set for a great weekend. You know, yesterday I brought you a report that the United States State Department was criticizing Israel for religious discrimination. Here's a reply today out of a Rutsheva. The headline says, Young Israel slams critical U.S. report. The National Council of Young Israel, NCYI for short, has condemned a U.S. State Department report that criticizes Israel for alleged religious discrimination against non-Jews and non-Orthodox Jews. The report put Israel in the same category as Afghanistan, China, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Iran in terms of religious freedom. Although Israel was established as a Jewish state in 1948, it has spent the past 6 decades actively encouraging and facilitating freedom of religion for all of its citizens, said NCYI President Shlomo Mostovsky. Equating Israel, the United States' sole democratic ally in the Middle East region, with rogue nations that actively suppress the free exercise of religion is unjust and uncalled for. That's a pretty mild response. I would have flown off the handle on the United States State Department, putting Israel in the same category as Iran, China, and North Korea. Anyway, this goes on to say, Mostovsky says the Israeli courts have consistently focused on the importance of protecting freedom of religion for its citizens. But clearly, I think it's pretty plain to see that this administration has a different agenda for Israel. Okay? You know, I've never seen a president talk badly of Israel from a platform in the most populous Muslim nation, Indonesia, like our president did this week. Seems uncalled for. Anyway, just my observances. Here's a story out of Yahoo.com. It says, no link between peace process, U.S.-Israeli aid, says Mahmoud Abbas. This out of Dubai today. Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas says he refuses to link the troubled Middle East peace process with a U.S. offer of additional military aid to its Israeli ally in a newspaper interview published today. He said, we refuse to allow the offer of planes to be linked in any way to a freeze on settlements, he told the London-based Arab newspaper Asharq Al-Awsat. Whatever that is. Anyway, so here's the United States. You know, they've proposed this 3-month building freeze, and we'll give you lots of planes and this and that. More on that later. But Abbas is saying, you know what? No. If that's what it takes to get them to agree to this 3-month freeze extension, then no, I don't want it. So here's Abbas, the guy on the other side, trying to make peace and get a Palestinian state out of the deal, saying, you know what? If you're going to give them 20 warplanes, then the deal's off. This guy's just looking for a way out. Everything that comes up, oh, I'm going to walk away. Oh, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to take my ball and go home. You guys can't play. Like I've said many times, Palestinians don't want peace. They want Israel to go away. And if they have 20 new warplanes, it's going to be that much harder for them to wipe them out militarily. Anyway, I'm not going to read that whole story because it's more just a bunch of rhetoric from the same guy that brings you the best rhetoric on the internet. Anyway, here is something out of DEPCA, DEPCAfile.com. U.S. says building freeze must cover Jerusalem and no F-35 warplanes for free. What? So the United States, after Netanyahu said, put this all in writing and we'll consider it, now the U.S. is changing their entire position. Hey, you know what? Don't get me wrong here. I'm a patriot. I'm an American. I love this country. However, I don't recognize this country as the country I grew up loving. Something has happened to it. You know what it was? They've tried to take God out of everything. And look how far downhill we've slid. Hope all you atheists are happy with the way your country is today. That minor less than 1% that wanted the 10 Commandments taken off the courthouse steps and in God we trust taken off our money and prayer taken out of school. Look where we are. Anyway, the Obama administration officials deny Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came away from his marathon meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on November 11th with a pledged package of major incentives for a 90-day settlement construction freeze. DEPCA files Jerusalem and Washington sources report today. The scale of U.S. benefits as presented by the Prime Minister to Israel's Security and Foreign Affairs Cabinet November 13th and the full Cabinet November 14th is described in Washington as misleading. According to that briefing, Washington was prepared to leave Jerusalem out of Israel's second building moratorium on disputed territory and offered to let Israel have a second batch of 30 F-25 stealth warplanes free of charge, in addition to the first 20 Israel had already purchased. But now sources are saying, no, that's not exactly the way it happened. Doesn't surprise me. Not one bit. But I'm not going to read this whole story here because it just kind of makes me sick. So basically, the United States dangled a carrot in front of Israel, said, hey, 3-month build freeze, we'll give you all this stuff. And Netanyahu says, great, put it in writing and I'll present it to the cabinet and we'll see if we can reach an agreement. Well, suddenly the story's changed. Oh, well, you know what? We weren't really offering all that. So, really? Here's a story out of Reuters.com. It says the U.S. bars Palestinian statehood moves in UN agencies. Away from the headlines, Palestinians have been trying to advance their statehood agenda in small but symbolic ways in United Nations agencies that fall off the radar for most people. But even on the outer reaches of the sprawling UN system, their efforts are seen to have been blocked by a United States seemingly resolved not to display any tilt toward Palestinians as it tries to broker peace talks with Israel. So the U.S. has blocked Palestinians being able to go to the UN and claim statehood. They're saying, you got to reach an agreement. Okay, you can't claim statehood if you have no place to call a state. So back to the table, you guys, and work this out. Who knows if it's going to work? And, it's funny watching all this play out. Just all the posturing and all the, oh, well, you do this and I'll do that. And, it's madness. Here's a story out of ClevelandJewishNews.com. Okay, a Vatican expert says Islam is the top interfaith priority. Last month, Archbishop Cyril Salim Boustros of Newton, Massachusetts, fueled a firestorm of criticism in Israel and elsewhere when he said Jews cannot justify Israeli occupation of Palestinian land because they are the chosen people. He said this promise was nullified by Christ. More of that replacement theology that is not in the Bible, but only in the hearts of evil men that don't know what the Bible says. He is the leader of the Greek Melkite Catholic Church in the U.S. He spoke at a special Catholic Synod of Bishops for the Middle East in Rome. He said there is no longer a chosen people. Really? So God makes a covenant forever and you decide when it's over? Okay. He says Catholic-Jewish relations are still important, as the controversy shows, but Islam has supplanted Judaism as the top priority for the Catholic Church, said John Allen Jr., Vatican correspondent for CNN. Speaking recently at a forum sponsored by the Abrahamic Center of Notre Dame College in South Euclid, Allen attributed the shift primarily to changes in the Church's demographics and the rise of radical Islam. The Catholic population explosion in Asia, Africa, and Latin America means that today most Catholics are living in close proximity with Muslims, not Jews. Judaism does not have a significant footprint in the global South, Allen pointed out. It was different 100 years ago, when there were 266 million Catholics, with 200 million of them in Europe and Asia. Today, there are 1.2 billion Catholics in the world, with 720 million in what Allen calls the Southern Hemisphere, Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So, he says, with this population shift, there are new, younger Catholic leaders who did not live through the Holocaust. They don't feel the same sense of historical responsibility for anti-Semitism as do Catholic clergy in Europe and North America. So, here's the Catholics trying to side up with Islam. I really think Islam will probably become the one world religion spoken of in Revelation. God help us all. I really hope and pray that the rapture is something that's going to happen before any of that does, because I don't want to live in a world where Islam is the one world government, because I'll lose my head, because I will not bow down to a false God, and Jesus Christ is the only way to God the Father, and I will never refute that, no matter who threatens me with death. Right? Here's a story, heartwarming story, more from that religion of peace. This out of Israel Today. A man tries to stab a Jewish woman to prove he's a good Arab. What a good Arab. 50-year-old man from the eastern Jerusalem village tried to stab a young Jewish woman at the nearby Hadassah Mount Scopus Hospital in order to prove to his friends that he's a good Palestinian Arab. Police said the man followed the young woman for some distance before pulling out a large kitchen knife and running toward her. Ah! Fortunately, the woman reached the guard station at the hospital entrance before her would-be assailant reached her. After being taken in for questioning, the man admitted that he wanted to kill a Jew in order to prove to his friends that he was not collaborating or sympathizing with Israel. This is a growing phenomenon and is something that should not be allowed to continue. Yeah, go kill a Jew to show us how... Oh, man, really? Okay. You know, you've heard this story this week about the guy in the airport terminal. Hey, he talks about junk and I'll have you arrested. I got a solution for this, okay? And this could be a win-win for everybody. But you step into a booth, it doesn't x-ray you, but it will detonate any explosive device you might have on your body, okay? So it'd be a win-win for everybody, and there would be none of this talk about racial profiling, and this method would eliminate a long and expensive trial. Justice would be quick and swift. It's so simple that it's brilliant, okay? I can see it now. You're in the airport terminal and you hear this muffled explosion. Shortly thereafter, there's an announcement that comes over the PA. Attention standby passengers. We now have a seat available on flight 1991 heading to Washington. Paging maintenance. Shop vac needed in booth number 4. Detonate any explosives, and, you know, the underwear bomber, the shoe bomber, these kind of people, they'll be eliminated. You know, justice is served. Just my thoughts. Okay, here's something. I'm kind of tired of the politicians. You know, Congress, they make motions to raise their own pay. They don't take any of the programs they try to force down our throats. Here's something I think whose time has come. We need to pass this. It's called the 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Okay, a lot of people these days do not realize that congressmen and senators, they serve one term, and after that, they get the same pay for the rest of their lives until they die. Truth, look it up. Look it up. They have their own health care. They don't get on the health care that they're wanting us to take. So, I just think something like this makes perfect sense and it's fair. Congress shall make no law that applies to the citizens of the United States that does not apply equally to the senators and or representatives, and Congress shall make no law that applies to the senators and or representatives that does not equally apply to the citizens of the United States. Just saying, I think it's fair. Okay, I've been talking about the cross. I need to hurry. I'm running out of time. Isaiah 53:5 says, "But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities, and by his stripes we are healed." Okay, about 700 years before the birth of Christ, God gave the prophet Isaiah an oracle concerning the cross. It details the suffering Christ would endure, and he was wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquities. But Isaiah's prophecy doesn't stop there. It goes on to predict that people would also be healed by his stripes. Two things to be noted here. First, the stripes refer to the scourging that Jesus endured before going to the cross. Secondly, the Hebrew word for healed here speaks of touching something that's wounded or injured in such a way that it's fully restored to health and wholeness. Okay, so physically, Matthew 8:17 connects Isaiah's prophecy with his healings that Jesus performed during his earthly ministry, but it's the Apostle Peter who makes the spiritual connection. In 1 Peter 2:24 it says, "He himself bore our sins in his own body on that tree, that we, having died to sins, might live for righteousness, by whose stripes you were healed." Listen, God bless you. have a great weekend. Go out and praise and worship your God this weekend. Take a friend. And I hope to see you again on Monday. Take care.